Hello, everyone. Welcome to Screen Junkies News. I'm Alicia Malone, and it is the end of 2016. And despite for the blockbusters, let's just not talk about them, it was actually a really great year for film. So we have compiled our list of favourites. We're going to go through them all, and I'm joined by Dan Murrell, Andy Signor, and Roth Cornett.
Hello.
So in no particular order, we're just going to run through our faves of the year, starting with Moonlight. Oh, I love this film. Roth, you did as well.
Yes, I think this one is, and we've talked about this previously, probably a frontrunner for the Academy Award, and deservedly so. And pretty remarkable because in relative terms, this is a very small film. It's so beautifully constructed and told. It's a simple story, told in a very interesting way that I think is, and this is going to sound a little heady, but what's great about it is it's one of these stories that is deeply personal, both to the filmmakers and in terms of the story it's telling, but it's also very universal, which is a really difficult thing to accomplish.
Yeah, very elegantly done, Andy, and as you said, fairly simple, but it tells this story of this one guy's life in 3 parts.
Yeah, it's sort of Boyhood-esque in a way. You're watching like sort of a slice of life, but where Boyhood didn't have much plot. I don't know. I got a little bit more out of this story and what this man's going through, and it's definitely a harder life and just sort of the challenge he has to go through. And the acting is just fantastic in this film. It's shot beautifully, I thought. All around, I agree. Frontrunner for Best Picture and definitely one of the highlights of the year.
Yeah, Mahershala Ali's the actor that's getting, and Naomi Harris are the 2 actors that are getting the buzz out of this. All 3 actors that played the lead, I thought, were also great. And this was one of the movies that there were several. I thought Manchester by the Sea, which we'll talk about later, I think, had the same thing. But it's movies in this year that were more experiential. They weren't necessarily plot-driven. It was more about living in the skin of somebody. It's an interesting trend that we're seeing in films, I think, where not as many of these awards films are becoming plot-driven. They're more just like living the life of somebody.
And I know we have to move on from it. I just want to highlight again the cinematography in this film because it is so lush and gorgeous.
Dreamlike at moments. And I think that all adds up to that experimental tone. And I love that filmmakers are playing with form.
And yeah, and I think that they were choosing 3 different stocks to reference in the 3 different stages of life. And I think all 6 actors were great. But also, like, it reminds me a little bit of City of God in that it's incredibly beautiful, but telling a very difficult story. And he becomes the witness in his own life in the same way that the lead character was in City of God.
Yeah, another film that, Dan, you just mentioned, Manchester by the Sea by Kenneth Lonegan, starring Casey Affleck as this guy who has to return home to look after his nephew and face his demons. This, to me, was a great surprise. I saw it at Sundance along with Roth and did not know what was coming.
Yeah, this is a movie that has great performances. I think the performances are the strength of this movie. This is a movie that didn't quite congeal together like Moonlight did for me. My personal list, it didn't quite make my top 5. But yeah, I mean, this is the strength of a great writer and director in Kenneth Lonergan and great actors. I mean, Casey Affleck, he's been nominated for Assassination of Jesse James. You know, he's shown that he can anchor a movie, or at least in a supporting role. But this is really his movie, and he does a great job. But Michelle Williams, Kyle Chandler, such a great supporting cast. And then the young actor who plays his nephew, Lucas Hedges, who's getting some legitimate award show buzz. Really, really well performed and well acted movie.
I mean, this movie was summed up to me with one scene. I think we all know what scene it was, but it is one of those living in the skin with this movie. You're not really sure why he is the way he is or what's going on. And then there's this one scene with him and Michelle Williams that's literally like Oscar mic drop moment that you just watch and just, I'd never, just in an acting tour de force between the 2 of them, you finally get some understanding of what's going on. And just, it's just so heartbreaking and so beautifully done. That scene was probably more effective, and overall, if I had to pick between Manchester and Moonlight, I'd probably click to Manchester just for those moments.
Because you're a parent as well?
Yeah, I think being a parent helped in that a little bit more. I mean, both are about kids in a way, but yeah, it's Manchester hit me a little harder, I think, just for that sake alone.
Yeah.
Manchester, when I saw it at Sundance, I said, this is my favorite of the movie of the year. It was in January. And I said, I don't think anything's going to unseat it. And nothing really did until Moonlight came along. There's still some films I want to see over the next couple of weeks. But to me, I actually think it's not just the performances, though you're right. That moment is the moment where I audibly had that noise happen and cried.
Punched me in the gut.
Yeah,
I was like,
punches you in the heart and the throat and the gut at the same time. Yeah, it's so powerful. But it's also very structurally interesting, like Moonlight. You know, it's told non-linearly in its own way. Moonlight's linear. And it is a jigsaw puzzle. You're figuring out what's going on with this man, and by the time you realize how irrevocable it is, not many films are willing to take that stance that there are things in life that are absolutely irrevocable. There are no happy endings in coming back.
Yeah, well, a movie that is bittersweet as well and has more emotion to it than you might expect is La La Land, the beautiful film by Damien Chazelle, harking back to the great classic musicals of the past. Dan, you know my love for this film. What did you love the most about La La Land?
It was just such a breath of fresh air, and it just showed that awards contenders, they have this reputation for being dour and depressing, and it showed that a movie can really have something to say and be deep, but not be heavy. And this is a movie that just, I love that all the edge that Damien Chazelle showed in Whiplash is replaced with just hope and just this sense of love. Because living in Los Angeles helps this movie for me because it is a love letter to the city, but I think beyond that is such a great story. Ryan Gosling, Emma Stone, I can't think of a combination that would have sold the story better. And it's just, you just feel like a weight's been lifted off of you while you're watching this movie. No, it doesn't matter how you feel going in. It's just so vibrant, and I love this movie. As we're sitting today, right now, I think it's at number 1 on my list. But there's a lot of shuffling that can be done.
Yes, and it's for dreamers out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I think the movie is made for people like us. Like when I came out to LA with that dream, and you're following the dream, and then LA hits you hard, and you don't really know how it's going.
That moment where you want to give up.
Exactly, and I
just
just think
yourself.
Damien Chazelle, just I've said this before, but it's like every director, it's almost like the second film is like the second album. Like it really all comes to that. Can you sustain what you did before? And I think he's proving himself that he can. Like the fact that he put all his cards on the table and brought all that credit he earned from Whiplash, be like, I'm doing a musical, a weird like indie LA musical. I'm doing it. I'm cashing in my cards early. And it paid off. Like I'm so excited to see where he goes. I can't wait.
The chemistry between Ryan and Emma.
Insane.
They're so good together. Third film together.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what's interesting to me about this movie too is that he wanted to make La La Land before Whiplash, and he actually had to make Whiplash, and that had to be the success that it was in order to get the money because this is a little more expensive. I mean, you can see that.
You could see the going into a Hollywood production office and being like, I want to make a musical.
Come on,
I think of Richard Kelly coming off of Donnie Darko, and then he did Southland Tales, which didn't work for him.
Exactly.
What could have gone that way, and it's risky.
Yeah, and I think that you should watch these movies in a way back to back, Moonlight, La La Land and Whiplash, right? Because they're two sides of the coin of this idea of being an artist and what it takes and the sacrifice that it takes. This one is a lot more hopeful, but not so much so that it fully goes to those old Hollywood musicals that do have the patent happy ending.
And both of those movies have J.K. Simmons going like an angry finger.
He better be in every one of his movies.
Oh, yeah, he's got to be. A brilliant documentary this year, Wiener. Andy, just so fascinating to watch this guy who can't get out of his own way, Anthony
Just so
Weiner.
depressing.
It's depressing, but also really interesting, I found too.
Yeah, it's just this, I don't know. Politics this year weren't my favorite. This was just threw it on. But yeah, I mean, the fact that he let all of this be documented. It's sort of amazing.
It's like watching a car crash in slow motion, and then he backs the car up in front of a train, and then he picks up the wreckage and walks off the cliff with it.
It's okay.
It's astonishing to think that like this guy just can't get out of his own way, and it's not even tragic because at the end you're like, F that guy.
Like, then he did it again.
Yeah, he did it again and again, and
Yeah.
after this movie again, and beyond the ramifications, just knowing the pain that this caused in the real world subsequent to this movie, even more so. It's infuriating and fascinating at the same time.
and funny and sad.
Yes.
I don't know. I think one of the things that's interesting to me about this is that if anyone was going to allow cameras into their life in this way, it's this guy who is clearly an exhibitionist.
Clearly
you know?
obsessed.
He's an emotional exhibitionist. He's a physical exhibitionist. He's got an addiction. But the thing that I also found about this movie that a lot of people aren't talking about, because of course this is the story of like you are your worst enemy, is that the media, to me, I was so angry at the media.
They loved it.
Because it just didn't matter how good or bad a politician he was, and everybody's welcome to their own opinion about that. But what they cared about were those D pics. That's it. And it just showed how the headlines, and it just showed how skewed the priorities are. It became this witch hunt of how dare you, sir, as if you've never done something stupid.
I I know.
As
he
if
just
you
does
never
it
made a mistake.
again and again.
Yeah.
Hell or High Water, moving on. It was a neo-Western, brilliant movie with Chris Pine, Ben Foster. I remember us seeing this at Cannes. It was like dark movie, dark movie, dark movie. Amazing. I mean, it's still dark, but it's just a piece of joy at the same time.
It's such a beautiful Western and a great kind of heist film. But the other thing that I thought was cool about this movie, we talked about La La Land, which celebrates Hollywood, and there's a lot of films that do that. This is a film that is looking at a slice of American life that we don't actually see a lot of these days. I mean, not only do we not see a lot of Westerns, but we just don't see this portion of America and that experience on film. People that are trying to hold on to land, that are farmers, that are desperate, that the banks are screwing over. And it does all of that without sort of hammering you over the head with it. And it's just like a cracking good story, with some great acting.
And thank God it came out in the summer, because as a guy who had a summer show covering this wasteland, this was such a bright spot in the middle of a minefield of crap. Jeff Bridges, I felt like, even though he was kind of doing what he did in True Grit, he's kind of playing that same character. I still loved him. I still love that character, Ben Foster and Chris Pine. Ben Foster, I kind of knew might have had this in him. Chris Pine, I was surprised by it, to be honest. Not that he was bad in anything, but people see him as Captain Kirk. They see him as the kind of the blockbuster guy. He surprised me in this movie, and just a old-fashioned kind of Bonnie and Clyde type thing, but with a little bit more of an edge. I like how they told the story. They didn't tell you everything up front. It
doesn't go where you think it's going to go. Yeah, it's good.
And it's understated was another thing that I really liked about it. I should say Americana, not America.
Oh, Americana. Arrival was another brilliant surprise, but of course it has the director, Denis Villeneuve, who's proved himself time and time again beforehand, and the brilliant Amy Adams and Jeremy Renner. Andy, did you love the balance between the intelligent stuff and the more emotional stuff?
Yeah, I got to be honest. I can't think of another movie this year where I left that just challenged my head so much. It just forced me to think in new ways, in different ways, and I just was especially coming out of such a terrible summer. It was like this fall gold mine of just like, oh my gosh, it just challenged the way I was thinking and looking at things, and I didn't see things coming that it showed me. So I had a really good time with this movie. I loved the ideas in it. I loved the way it was shot. I loved where it goes, and it still challenges me to this day. I've still had arguments with my wife and friends. I'm just like, what is that? How did that? And it's open for interpretation in a really brilliant way.
Yeah, it continues to challenge me to this day. I still think about this movie and what my exact thoughts on it and where I land on some things. Did this work for me? Did this not work for me? Do I agree with this way of storytelling? Do I not agree with it? It's a movie that I enjoy, don't get me wrong, and they need to make more movies like this, complicated movies, things that don't spoon feed this to you. But I like these kind of think piece conversation movies. The directors like Denis Villeneuve that are not afraid to make a movie that says, like, I'm going to challenge you and I'm not going to give you the answer.
And also
you're
be entertaining at the same time, which I think is lacking at the moment. And I know, Ralph, you love the concepts about time.
I do.
Being wibbly wobbly.
Wibbly wobbly time. I mean, time and the depiction of time in film is one of my favorite things. I don't know why, but I actually do love the way it's done here. And Dan and I have had a lot of debates about that, and that's fun for me because I don't necessarily think I'm right. I just think I have a different perspective, and that's what a great film does. But the other thing that I love about this movie is that it's such a great character study for her. It's all about how she makes her choices, how she thinks, and how her thinking evolves and changes through her experiences. And she's willing to make an emotional sacrifice in a way that I think is really quite beautiful.
I'm going to talk about the next one quickly because I'm the only one who's seen it, but I can't recommend Patterson enough. It's by Jim Jarmusch, a very simple film starring Adam Driver, who plays a bus driver in Patterson, New Jersey. There's a lot of parallels there, and I think it's on purpose because this shows a week in his life, and he goes through the kind of monotony of day-to-day, but there are specific patterns that keep happening in his life, and nothing dramatic happens, and that's what I like about it, but I think that's what some people might not like about it because nothing really happens. It's a slice of life, but it's so beautifully done and all about art and poetry as well as just the simplicity of life. So highly recommend checking out Patterson. Now one that, Andy, you've been loving for so long, Sing
we all
Street.
have, but Sing Street, man.
Sing Street.
It's still, I think, my number one of the year. It just was rare, very early in the year, but just to leave the theater so happy. I feel like so many of these movies get so depressing or full of themselves or you're disappointed by them. And I just went in completely unexpecting the joy I would feel leaving Sing Street, from the music to just the performances to sort of the ending to the sort of as another sort of, I feel like, movie of very similar in themes to La La Land in a way, just like the younger version and the less Hollywood version of it. And I think I like that more. Like, it's easy. I get why La La Land will get all the props, but I do think Sing Street is more for the masses in a way of just like everyone has that dream of being a band and a kid and I'm going to go live the dream. You don't know if they're going to get there, and love and all that stuff. So Sing Street still sings strong for me.
Oh, wow.
Love it.
Yeah, I think the cool thing about Sing Street, to your point, the reason that I really like it as well, is that I get why La La Land is like about, it's kind of like a dichotomy. You're either a movie star and you've made it, or you're not an artist at all. And I think Sing Street and Once and movies like that open up the door to the conversation that it's not that black and white. You know, you're not either famous or not an artist. You know, there's a whole world in between those two things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's not an ounce of cynicism in this movie. So much so that they even, in the movie, in the credits of the movie, say, like, this is based on a place, but it's gotten better. You know, it's not trying to point fingers and blame something, and it's not about the downfall of childhood. It's about a kid that wants to play in a band.
Yeah.
And a girl that he likes.
Yeah.
And that's simplicity.
Going after the girl
right?
that you don't have the balls to think you can like.
Right.
Just like
It's
putting yourself out there. There's so many things going on.
just that simplicity, and it's a shame that I'm glad that it's on Netflix Instant, because when people want to see it now, you can say, like, go watch it on Netflix right now, and most people can do that. But criminally under pushed and under marketed and under supported by the studio.
And crazy, like, there's no other film. I mean, I know I championed hard. We all did, but I really was going crazy with it. But every day I get a tweet. Thank you for telling me about that movie.
Almost every day. I just
absolutely.
watched it. I'm
They
about
still
to watch
come
it.
in.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You can absolutely guarantee of all the movies that we have on this list, well, La La Land too, you're going to feel good after watching Sing Street.
Absolutely. It's such a great film. Okay, we've got to run through the last three quickly, so I'm just going to point one at each of you. The Lobster Den.
I love this movie. It makes you laugh and then shocks you at every turn. It's the definition of not every movie is for everybody. But this movie was for me. Colin Farrell was great. John C. Reilly was great. I love everyone in this movie, and it is one of the weirdest, craziest comedies I've seen in a
comedy,
long time.
Dark comedy.
Zootopia, go.
Zootopia. Okay. The Lobster is also for me, but I did also love Zootopia. I think that this is it is a film that is truly for the whole family, and I think it's one that kids can go back and get more out of. It's got more layers to it than some other family films may, but it's not so convoluted and complex that a kid can't grasp the basics of what's going on. Andy, you wrote the honest trailer for it. What is your take?
Yeah, no, it goes somewhere you don't think it's going to go for a kids movie, and I just applauded that so much. I just thought
Great characters.
A lot of great animated films this year, to be honest. It's actually a really good year for animated film, but this one still stood out to me as sort of just going for something new, something different, creating a new world, and then challenging us and kids to, like, be better people.
Yeah.
And bring it home, Deadpool, Andy.
I mean, I got to put Deadpool in here. I think it started the year with a bang. The honest trailer obviously affected our Screen Junkies year with Ryan showing up, but I just thought this film really stood apart from the rest and showed you can make a new style of blockbuster. Like, I think it deserves some props and respect for taking the genre and shaking it up a little bit and giving us something different. I applaud it to no end, and I think we are reaching that superhero fatigue, and so I think this was just the perfect time for him to walk in and be like, beep, screw all you guys, I'm going to do it my way.
Yeah.
And bravo to it. I got to give it props.
More than any other film, it proved this year the value of being different, because that's why that movie succeeded. It didn't succeed because people knew who Deadpool was, because most people didn't. It succeeded because it had a passionate creative team, and they dared to be different, from the movie to the marketing to everything about this movie. It was daring because it did stand out from the pack and didn't try to be like everything else.
And it stayed true to that character, which is another thing that I think was very important about that film, having failed to do that previously. One more thing. You know that I worship, like, really smart producers, and I gotta say that sometimes having limitations gives you fruit, because they had less money on this film and it yielded some of the better jokes. If you look at him, and for for getting his guns, he will know what I mean.
Here. Dan Murrell, Andy Signal, Ross Cornett, thank you so much. And you can get more Screen Junkies goodness right here, Screen Junkies News right over there. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment below. What was your favorite film of 2016? You can follow us on Twitter at SJ News. See you soon.